everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stephenson, the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. We are back here today, a brand new episode for a brand new year here in 2024. We're going to be talking about forest carbon development, and we're joined by the founder and CEO of NativState, Stuart Allen. And before we introduce him and kind of get a little bit of his backstory, I want to thank our sponsor this month, which is also NativState, for their support of the show. We're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in this episode. But for now, let's get back to our guest this month. It's Stuart Allen. Like I said, he is the founder and CEO of NativState. Stuart, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Steph, for having us.
No, yeah, for sure. And we're recording this. What is today? Like the 19th of December. So we're getting it in right before the big holidays hit. So thank you for carving some time out. I know you've got a lot going on. So thank you for kind of carving some time out for us to do the show.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Stuart, let's kind of hop into it first. Since you are a new guest, what I want to do is kind of get a little bit of your history. Can you tell the people your history in this career?
Well, I'll do my best, Seth. My background, I tell people this all the time, is not in forestry. I actually came from the energy space. I spent my career up until starting NativState as a petroleum engineer. I've worked all over North America on both large projects, small projects. I'm one of the few engineers who have taken wellbore from a stake in the ground, leasing a landowner, staking a well, all the way through the full production cycle of oil and gas industry. How I came to NativState was really a few years ago during COVID. I'd sold a company of mine in the oil and gas space, I guess in 19. And in 2020, me and my wife were going to travel and, take some time off and just enjoy we've got 4 kids, or at that time we had 3, now we've got 4. So COVID baby. But in 2020, COVID happened. We weren't able to travel. So we started buying up some property there in north of Conway, sort of Conway, Faulkner County. And I grew up on a farm, wanted my kids to have that same type of experience. So bought a few hundred acres there. And one of those tracts that I bought was a nice, beautiful tract, bottomland hardwoods. And at that point in time, I bought it for mainly recreational property, knew that there had to be some timber value on it, but didn't understand, like I said, not a forest, didn't have any idea about the forestry industry. So there real soon, I was actually trying to figure out how to get to this. Everything was flooded, had to get to where these ducks were out there in the woods. And I'm sitting on a gravel road, and a procurement forester pulled up beside me in a little white pickup truck, and he said, "You Mr. Allen?" I said, "Well, don't call me Mr. Allen, but absolutely." And we got to talking. He said, "Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you to buy the timber off your property. I'd like to make you an offer on it." And I said, "Well, what's it worth?" I not know anything about it. He made he said, well, it came back to me. He went and did his cruise out there later, a few months later, came back to me and said, I'll give you he offered me a price that just blew my mind, almost twice what I had actually paid for that piece of property, or that tract anyway. So I got the wheels turned. I was like, man, I'm a capitalist. Like, I would like a piece of property to at least try to pay for itself. I said, but man, if I cut down that timber, it's one of those things that it'd never be the same. Bottomland hardwoods, once you cut them down, at least in my lifetime. I said, well, there's got to be another way to monetize on this forest other than going out there and clear cutting it. So with wheels turning, also with my ear to the ground in the energy space, carbon was something that kept reoccurring. I was hearing it all the time from colleagues that I worked with in the past. I had a little experience with carbon offsets. Just truly, I looked at them another tax that I had to pay to do my job, when we were doing different wells around the country. I said, well, forest sequester carbon. I know about carbon offsets from having to, look into them on other projects. I said, I wonder if my property qualifies for a forest carbon program. And with that, I contacted, the big guys in the space. There's really 2 other companies that were really big. I think both of them good companies. And I approached one of them, worked my way all the way up the food chain to talk to the senior vice president, asking him specifics on projects and how the program works. And we got to said, well, I want to enroll my property with you. And he goes, well, how many acres you have, Stuart? And real quick, I tell him, I've got a few hundred acres. And he goes, well, Stuart, I hate to break it to you, but our average parcel size is 20,000 acres. Oof. I said, man, there's no way. I said, 98% of the people in the whole state don't have 20,000 acres. I mean, much less 20,000 continuous acres in one parcel. I said, it just doesn't happen. Not in this part of the world, right? Mm-hmm. So my background in oil and gas, and I've had the opportunity to put together a few projects. We put together, oil and gas projects that require coordination between hundreds of landowners in a lot of cases to go out there and actually develop an oil and gas project. Well, looking at it from that standpoint, I was like, well, I wonder if we can bring together some of my friends and neighbors and people to create something of a little bit of scale to where then I can enroll it. Well, as I got into that process, and we're still learning every day, I realized, there's a lot of interest in the forest carbon space. Once a landowner understands what forest carbon is, there's a lot of interest there. And I was able to talk to my dad, our farm I grew up on, some of our neighbors around there, my property, and found that, man, people would love to figure out additional ways to monetize on their property. So with that, we started real small, just a few of us, me and Robert Staten, he's my engineering manager, and Alex Claypool out in Denver. We started the little business up, and we really just started talking with landowners. Hey, this is what we want to do. Is this something that interests you? And we started to expand our little footprint and learned a lot. And I want to say thank you to all the early landowners that believed in the NativState and the business model out there, but learned a lot and revised some of our agreements and made this thing to where it started to gin a little bit. And after 6 months of stumbling a lot, we finally got something that worked really well for those landowners and for us. We risked a little bit more capital to where now we've put together, we're over 200,000 acres in the Mississippi River Valley, sort of, Arkansas, Louisiana primarily, but also Tennessee, Missouri, Mississippi, East Texas. And we've grown pretty rapidly once we started gathering a foothold. To now, I believe we're the largest forest carbon developer when it comes to aggregating small landowners. And so we're excited about that. We've gone from staff of about 3 to almost 40 people now, and continue to grow every day and expand. And we get out there, we do what we say we're going to do. So it's worked well, and I think it resonates with landowners that, hey, there's an opportunity here for them. And a lot of education, but that's how, NativState came in to be, and that's where we are today.
So a little landowner curiosity kind of blossomed into a multi-state company endeavor, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I'll say my property is one of the very first, literally properties we enrolled in the whole program. And, we've partnered with our landowners are really a part of NativState because we don't win. The way we've structured it is there's no money to be made on the NativState side if that landowner's not making money along with us.
Okay. So, Stuart, let's kind of hop into forest carbon itself. When we're talking about forest carbon development, what exactly are we talking about? Because this term is getting tossed around a lot in the industry. Obviously, you know that better than anyone. But what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about forest carbon development?
How many hours do we have?
I told you an hour.
Okay.
So, but hey, we can always edit as need be. So.
Yeah. So forest carbon development, I think that's a loaded word right now. And let's break it down to the very basics of it. So what we're talking about when we do forest carbon development is, and I'm going to start with the industry first. Out there in the industry, you have emissions, from whatever process, energy, if it's an oil and gas company, they have process from drilling a well all the way through their refinery processes. If it's Walmart, they've got trucks up and down the road. J.B. Hunt trucks up and down. If it's a bank, it is the energy they burn to process their data systems. All all of that. So everything we do has an emissions footprint with it. And what has taken place over really, I'd say the last 4 or 5 years is really people trying to understand what exactly that emissions is. And so they've come out of the way to quantify it first. First, you got to understand what your emissions are. And so they quantify it in the form of 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent. So that's the quantification of emissions. So like in oil and gas, you're going to forgive me, I go back to oil and gas. That's my background is, we talk about oil and gas in barrels of oil or MCF of gas or, gallons. Well, in the emissions realm, it's CO2, 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalents. So what does that mean for carbon development? Well, anytime you have a tree, a grass that's green, it's going through photosynthesis. And that reaction, the chemical reaction during photosynthesis, is pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere, breaking it down into sugars and oxygen, releasing oxygen back. You understand that side of it. But as it's doing that, it's sequestering that carbon molecule into the woody matter of the tree, essentially. Well, the forestry industry has been doing this for, literally centuries. How fast is this stand of trees going to grow over the next 10 years, 20, 40, 100 years? So the forestry industry has been doing this forever. We've taken it now when we talk about forest carbon development, all right, based on what's out there today, and we call that, that's sort of like day one, what's out there today, how much carbon is this stand, if managed to the very maximum to sequester as much possible carbon as possible, how much is it going to sequester over a 20, a 40, 100-year period? And we look at it from a forest, a landscape type level out there. We look at it also at individual tree level as well. It's so what forest carbon is not, it's not going out there and say, hey, don't go ever cut your timber again. I think there's a big misconception is, hey, if I enroll it into a forest carbon program, I'm not allowed to go cut my forest any longer. That's not it at all. We encourage, burning of the forest. We encourage, when I say burning, controlled burns. We encourage selective harvest out there, timber stand improvement, all the good forestry practices that most people in Arkansas want on their property. Most of the forestry industry is doing it, a lot of this stuff already. And given different parts of the state, there's a lot of good forestry practice taking place. I mean, we've got some amazing forestry people, is what I've learned in the last 3 years of doing this. That's what forest carbon development is. It's how do you maximize the carbon sequestration on any acre of ground, and then the other side of it, and not change its land use. One thing about when you enroll in a forest carbon program is, in our program, this is where a lot of landowners really doesn't fit for them. They may have plans to develop that ground into a housing development or turn it into a cow pasture. Well, I tell landowners all the time, if that's what your goal is for this property, it's probably not a good fit to be in the NativState Forest Carbon Program. We're looking to create a permanence out there from that, keeping that forest intact, growing that biomass over a 40-year period, increasing your stockings. We're going to provide you with a forester. We work with consulting forestry groups all the time. We have our own, I'd be lying if I told you how many foresters we employ right now at NativState. We just had a new, one of our young guys just got his registered forestry, passed its test on last week, so we're excited about that. But, providing with registered forester, wildlife biologist, let's go manage your property for the forestry side of it, the wildlife on your property. At the same time, we're going to monetize on the carbon that's going to be grown on that property, because the landowner's truly going to give up they're going to give up the right to change that land use out there. It's not going to be a pasture at the end of it. It's going to be enforced, right? So that's very positive. Tons of co-benefits when we're talking about wildlife, water, stream, all that stuff. And as you know, there's not a whole lot of bottomland hardwood forest, left out here. We've basically, more than half the forest, or more than 90% of the forest in Mississippi, the Delta it's gone. So conserving those properties for the long haul, enhancing those properties through different management techniques, that's forest carbon development. What's really neat about it is for the first time, landowners are able to get paid for doing that. And we pay them in the form of a royalty. If we go sell a dollar worth of carbon off their property, then they're going to get a share of that royalty off of that dollar. So it's provides a lot of different benefits and some real money back to these landowners.
So you mentioned getting landowners with consulting foresters and kind of helping them manage for what they're wanting to manage for. But how does it exactly work for a company like NativState? Like how are you guys? I'll be blunt here. How are you guys making the money?
Good question. I promise you, I'm not here doing this for practice.
Yeah.
I'm doing it to make money too. We're making money. So let's take your typical 100-acre landowner in the state. We partner with him. We in our form of our carbon agreement. Mm-hmm. That carbon agreement basically has a royalty attached to it. So just like we've done, and literally it's just like in an oil and gas mineral agreement, mm-hmm. we look at that landowner's property and say, hey, we're gonna lease this 100 acres. We're gonna give you a 30-40% usually for that type of property, but depending on what management techniques they choose, royalty on that property, meaning that we don't make any money on that property until we sell carbon offsets from that property. We take on 100% of the development cost, which is pretty intense. Most people don't understand that this is a 2-year process. We usually say 18 months to 2-year process. And right now we're about to have the Shelby Taylor, I believe your sponsor, mm-hmm. last month.
Yes, sir.
They've enrolled about 18,000 acres with us, and there'll be the first credits issued out of NativState. It'll be coming off that here. It could be before Christmas. It'll be a nice early Christmas mm-hmm. present, but it'll probably be in January. But it's a 18-month to 2-year process of going out there and quantifying what's out there. We talk about quantifying that forest. It is literally getting down to the specific gravity of individual trees mm-hmm. out there across their property. Because at the end of the day, we go out there, and let me talk about that, and then I'll try and answer your question.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
That quantification of it, at the end of the day, all I have when I sit down with an end buyer of these carbon offsets is the data to support that property is going to have this amount of carbon on it from this day forward for the next 40 years on that property. And I have to have true quantification of that data. Forestry industry does this in their timber cruise on it. We do a forest carbon cruise. And that cruise is out there, and we maybe every 3 to 30 acres, depending on how homogeneous that property is, different, how many stands are on it, how it's mm-hmm. broken up. We do a 1/100th acre plot and 1/120th acre plot on there. So what that means is we go out there and we measure every tree in that 1/120th acre plot, and we measure total height of that tree. We measure merchantable height of that tree. We measure which angle it's leaning on. We measure if it's dead, if it has a bunch of deadwood with it, if it broke top, diameter at 4.5 feet. We may core some of the trees, depending on, make sure we've got the growth rates right on mm-hmm. how well, how fast that tree, that inside index is. We record all this information, considerable amount of data. And then you repeat that across property. And if you're doing, we've got some property, we've got hundreds of plots on. And you come with your statistical, what does that property look statistically from species type, stand makeup, growth, age, all of it. And then it goes back, and our geniuses back at the office, and they're a lot smarter than I am. We actually have 4 guys from DePaul that work there. We've got several engineers in forestry, biometricians, mm-hmm. doctors, PhDs that are all quantifying, how much carbon's out there. So at the end of the day, we have this truly quantifiable measurement of what's on any landowner's property, along with all the timber out there on their property, and we provide to those landowners, hey, here's how much carbon's on this stand, here's how much timber's on the stand. And by having that detailed information, I can take that to these large corporations that are wanting to buy carbon offsets. Mm-hmm. And let me step back. I don't take it just to them right out of the gate.
Yeah.
It goes through this fairly large, long, iterative process of we use the American Carbon Registry, the ACR. It's actually a Windrock International nonprofit that is, we believe, the leading, most robust carbon registry out there. And we enroll the properties through the American Carbon Registry. Those properties then go through a third-party audit process that is, it takes months. It's actually can be fairly aggravating to go through. For me it is, being I'm ready to go, and they take their time. But they go out there and remeasure a percentage of the plots that we've taken on that landowner's property. They go through all of our paperwork, our title. We have to take title back. We do 30-year title checks on these properties. They go through all of our information, the math behind it, the actual hard data, and say, hey, it's not just NativState saying these carbon credits exist. There's this third-party audit takes place, and then it goes through another independent audit. After they've checked their box, goes another independent audit, and then to the American Carbon Registry to where they actually issue credits on it. And once all those steps take place, then I have something I can take to a big corporation. And we work with companies around the world. I actually had a group out of Indonesia here a few weeks ago, took them out to properties that are wanting to offset their LNG tankers around the world. But we work with them. They see, right, you have all the information, you have all the data that shows, hey, these do exist. We have an agreement with those landowners. Hey, we're going to pay you a lot of money, landowner, to keep your property in this shape. You're going to have a biomass. You're going to have this amount of carbon. We're going to maintain around the property the next 40 years. You're going to get paid for it. And by doing so, we create that very legitimate carbon offset, carbon credit. And I use that offset and credit interchangeably a lot, but we create that, and that's what we have to actually sell. When we sell that, whether we sell it, I'd say right now about $14 is what a credit will sell for. At least the first initial set of credits will go for. That landowner will get 30 to 40% of that revenue out there, and then we maintain that process for the next 40 years with them. And then every 5 years we repeat that. And so what's cool about coming back every 5 years, we repeat that whole process, is as that forest grows and matures out there and they want to harvest more timber on it, we'll say, all right, hey, we've already given them an estimate at this time of how much timber they are allowed to harvest off the property. We're going to go out there and maximize the timber on the property, where to cut to maximize the revenue off their property and maintain it over that time frame. So it's really a win-win for everybody.
Okay. Well, Stuart, I tell you what, that's kind of where I was going, and thank you for allowing me to be so blunt. And because when we're talking about carbon, especially with landowners, I think they also have a lot of questions about what exactly a company like NativState or any other forest carbon development company is doing for them. And so that, I think, helps kind of paint a picture of how the whole process works, especially from your standpoint. So, but I tell you what, before we move on, let's take a quick pause right here. We're going to hear a little bit more from NativState since they are this month's sponsor. Landowners, have you heard about the new revenue opportunity available to you through forest carbon credits? We're excited to introduce you to NativState. This Conway, Arkansas-based forest carbon development company is partnering with landowners in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Missouri, providing access to the global carbon market. NativState partners with landowners of all sizes, including folks involved in the timber industry. If you have more than 40 acres of forested land, forest carbon credits could be a significant new revenue source for you. Visit NativState.com to learn how NativState can help you earn revenue on your land, improve your forest management, and boost your overall forest health and wildlife conservation. That's NativState.com, NativState.com. Thank you again to NativState for their support of this month's episode. So, Stuart, we've talked about kind of what these forest carbon companies are doing for landowners and kind of how they operate. But I guess another big question we need to discuss is a forest carbon program like this, does it work for every forest landowner? Or like what are some of the things, I guess, that landowners need to take into account before they decide, hey, this is something that I want to do?
Good question, Seth. I would say it's definitely not for everyone. We talk to landowners all the time and just say, this is probably not a good fit for you. One of the first questions that myself or, we've got several forest carbon specialists, they're running around talking, educating landowners or what this is and isn't. First question is really, what is that landowner's long-term goals? And I mean that I'm a landowner myself. What my long-term goals on my property was, I wanted to maintain it for ducks and those little greenheads floating out there this morning, which you ruined by
Sorry about
scheduling
that.
this. But I, it's really what matters to that landowner. What type of, we talk about legacy a lot here. I look at this. I've got 4 kids. What type of legacy do I want to leave for my kids? Well, I'd love for them to have the same opportunities that I had growing up in this state. Back when I was a kid, you could run around all over the place around south of Beebe, Arkansas, and find ducks to shoot. And it's changed a lot since then. There's subdivisions. There's a lot of growth happening in the state, which is good for the state, good for the economy. But it also has, whether you like it or not, growth has there's side effects to it, right? A lot of that is our natural resources. So when we talk about a landowner, hey, what do you want your property to be 20 years from now, 40 years from now? What do we deal with generations. We're not, 40 years, I'll be honest with you. If I'm still doing this right here 40 years from now, I screwed up, right? It's a long time. But that's the purpose of the program, is to be here for a long term and conserve these properties. So if a landowner tells me, hey, we're thinking about, developing this tract over here into a subdivision, man, I'm sorry, this probably not a good fit for you. Or, hey, we were approached by the, development commission of this county, and, they're thinking about would like to include this for a Amazon distribution center or something. And it has happened with our program. Man, it's probably not a good fit. Or if that landowner says, hey, their goal is, I want to turn this into my checking account as fast as possible, this isn't the program for you. This is the program for landowners that are like myself, like a lot of people that I know. And there's nothing wrong with maximizing the economic value on a piece of property at all, if that is converting it into, a subject. I wouldn't go out to Chenal Mountain and say, hey, let's go enroll this in a forest carbon program, because I can't look a landowner in the eye and say that's going to be your highest and best use economically for that property. But for those landowners that are looking at it from the standpoint of, like I was, and there's a great opportunity to make some money off the property, make some significant money off the property, conserve that property, have the help that, like I was looking at, it's like I'd never even thought about using a consulting forester. I think I can do it better myself, right? That's my attitude. And I imagine there's a lot of landowners in that 40 to a few hundred acres that are going, it's probably, why would I consult a forestry? I'll just do it myself. Honestly, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't have any idea until Tim White came along, one of our chief forester over there, that I thought I knew how to manage land. So he taught me there's a whole lot more to it than just, what I was thinking. So most landowners, it could be a great fit. A lot of times I say, hey, if your property seasonally floods, out there, where it's not going to be, you're not going to develop it or something like that, hey, this is probably a no-brainer for you. If you've got some of that stuff that's deep into the Ozarks and out there that it's going to be in timber, and it's going to be in timber, here's a great way to maximize the long-term timber on and grow mature timber, generate carbon revenue, continue to harvest. We're taking the most aggressive harvest off the table. You're not going to be able to clear cut it, but we're going to continue to harvest, and we're going to maintain that for, that stocking out there for, minimum of 40 years.
Well, no, and I was going to say that, this is something that we kind of harp on a lot on this show is there are people out there that have answers to questions, and, you don't know what you don't know. So the best thing to do is pick up a phone, give someone a call, because, and I, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm sure you guys probably can just go out and visit and look at the property and then kind of
absolutely
go from there.
We have a full staff of both foresters and forest carbon specialists that meet with landowners every day. One thing that we're not asking you to come to, we get a lot of inquiries on our website. Pick up the phone and call us. We're real people, Conway, Arkansas. I've got guys spread from, we got an office in Monroe, Louisiana. We're about to open one up in Missouri, a little office in Bentonville. But we're spread out regionally across this area, our backyard, and we've got our forest carbon specialists out there and foresters meeting every day to explain, hey, what it is and what it's not. The last thing I want to do is get a landowner involved in our program, and it just wasn't a good fit.
So is there a minimum acreage amount that you guys have, or and I'm speaking, I guess, from NativState specifically, but I don't know if there's a broader forest carbon company kind of minimum that most people require to enroll in something like this.
So I believe most companies will probably not go down to the small acres that we do. And I say that we set this up with the whole intention of it was based on the small guys like myself.
Yeah.
So it has to be enough acres to enroll it into the American Tree Farm System. We enroll every property in the American Tree Farm System as part of our process. So about 10 acres is what the minimum of a property that can be enrolled. With that being said, we have properties from today, I believe about 40 acres is the smallest, maybe 20 acres smallest in our program today, all the way up to, I've asked the guys for their permission, Callion Lumber in South Arkansas, over 43,000 acres in our program today. So, and we've everybody in between. So we've been blessed with hundreds of landowners to date that have trusted us, and a lot of both really small landowners and big landowners. And the idea is, hey, the company started with the premises, there's no other access for these smaller guys like myself to have access to these global carbon markets. And NativState's here to, provide that.
Okay. So Stuart, as we kind of round out this episode, one thing I did want to talk to you about was the challenges that you guys are facing. I guess, are there any challenges that you guys are currently facing with carbon?
Absolutely. I think if there wasn't any challenges, I think everybody, it'd be too, everybody to be in the space, and there's considerable amount of challenges. And I'll say there's one biggest issue that we had to overcome, and I'm so thankful for our landowners that jumped on board with this early, is you have to create scale in this to make any economics make sense. One reason why the bigger forest carbon developers haven't really got into this small landowner side of it is, 40 acres by itself doesn't make sense. 400 acres by itself doesn't make sense. 4,000 acres, it's starting to make sense, but really till you get to really about 10,000 acres in a project, it starts making economic sense from a developer standpoint to go put the resources to work. Because it takes a lot of the same resources to develop 40,000 acres as it does to 40 acres. So creating scale was a challenge early on. Now we've created that. So we're able to plug landowners where they fit best into multiple different projects. I think we have our 12th project on the ACR today. So you got to be able to really fit the puzzle together. This landowner's in the Delta. We've got another 8,000 acres in the Delta here. Let's put them together, block them up, and create a project there, or Ozarks, or vice versa. So that's a challenge. The other side of it was how do you actually get out there and market these carbon offsets in scale when you're dealing with a company. And we've been very blessed. I mean, the good Lord has blessed us with opportunity after opportunity, but we're dealing with companies that are in the top 10 largest companies in the world right now. We've got two of them that we've engaged in big ways with. And how do you market these credits? Well, those companies it takes them just as much time to write a $1 million check as it does to write a $40 million check. And, when you're a $200 billion company, you need to create scale. They have efficiencies of scale on their side. So you can't sell 5,000 acres worth of carbon offsets to these guys. You've got to sell big blocks, so that they know they have something substantial to take back and to their boardroom, at least to take the time of their board of directors to buy. So all of that has been a challenge. The other side is, from the landowner side, is education. I go back. I looked at this as a tax I had to pay to do my job when I was a young petroleum engineer. That's the way I looked at carbon. I'm about as conservative as any. I'm a conservative guy. I think we need to manage our resources better. I think conservation's good. I think it's all about managing resources, but educating the landowner out here on, first of all, especially in this part of the Bible Belt, the central United States, the flyover states, is that they really don't know anything about, most of the time they haven't heard of forest carbon, why it's important, what it actually means and what it does from both a climate, their property, money. So we spend a great deal of time educating landowners. I'm hoping that this podcast is something that can help educate some of these landowners. But hey, it's real. There are industry out there buying these carbon offsets. It does a lot of good for the environment. There's a lot of co-benefits for it, and it actually puts real dollars back in their pocket. So all of that, the education process has been a challenge. We developed a lot of material to help educate landowners, and it's just, I go back, I didn't know anything about this 3.5 years ago. Now I've learned a great deal. So with all that being said, challenges that are coming up, I believe, right now, a lot of people have the misconception that, hey, this is all backed by the government. We're in the voluntary space here. We don't deal with any government agency today. This is all corporations trying to get out ahead of the government coming here and fully regulating the carbon emissions. So they're literally, they've got together and said, hey, if we don't self-regulate ourselves, we know that it's coming. It's happened in Europe. It's happened in California. It's happened in the Northeast. The rest of the world is already in the carbon. Most of South America, believe it or not, is already in the regulated type carbon markets. Europe's looking at putting in carbon tariffs of products that come into the UK. So when you look at it from a global picture, most of the world, has been in some sort of carbon scheme, carbon trading, carbon allowances for quite some time. It's, here's something that, hey, can we apply that? Does this benefit my neighbors? And I think it does. I think there's a great opportunity through our program to provide landowners to these global carbon markets. And that's what we set out to do, and I'm proud to say we're doing it. So are there challenges? Every day, man, every day. But it's the challenge that make this a lot of fun.
Well, and I would have been very surprised. I figured there were challenges, but I would have been very surprised if your answer was like, no, everything's gravy at this point.
Oh,
so
hunky-dory, man.
Yeah. Well, Stuart, one thing, and you kind of touched on it here with your last answer, but I kind of want to go into, I want to ask this just so we make sure we touch on it, and we've kind of danced around it. But how does forest carbon development factor into the big picture, the global picture? What exactly is this doing from a global standpoint?
So from a global standpoint, you know, I could get, you know, we could take this question, it could go anywhere from here. But globally, when you look at, you know, there's a whole, and I didn't want to get into it, but, you know, climate change, you know, there's a lot of, oh, it's not real, it's real, it's not, I just, you know, my opinion on that. And that's the reason why carbon markets came up is I do believe the climate's changing. I just look at our duck season, man. Ducks come later and later every year. Just one little indicator of climate change. I know when I was a kid, you know, we had a lot more mallard ducks down here than we do now. Maybe that's the reason, maybe not. But I think there's a misconception between anthropologic climate change and you know, the natural cycles that the earth is going through. Well, I look at this as forest carbon is what I do know is more than 50% of the Earth's surface has been deforested in the last 150 years. So taking it from that standpoint and just looking at mass balance and balances of our global systems, meaning our nature systems out here is, you know, the facts are we are pumping a considerable amount more CO2 into the atmosphere. The other fact is we don't have the lungs of the earth, the forest that we had, you know, 100 years ago to absorb that CO2 in the atmosphere. So is it out of balance today? Is it going to continue to be out of balance? Well, you know, the mass balance, the facts say absolutely, it has to be. So when I look at forest, it is one part of that we can continue to manage better. And when I say that is, I look at our forestry industry in southeast Arkansas, and you've got guys that can grow more tons of timber on an acre of ground than we could have 100 years ago. That's where the forestry industry, I mean, that's what they're good at. Let's maximize that. But the fact of the matter is the non-industrial forest landowners control 61% of the forest across southeast United States. Guys like myself that don't have all the years of forestry under their belts to maximize that timber. But when you take it to the forest carbon program, you get that, then you start making change on a landscape basis. By reforesting some of this forest out there or some of these marginal ag grounds, you start making change in a big way. And I go back, so globally, it's a small drop in the bucket to the overall, you know, CO2 emissions we have out there. Hands down, I'm a pragmatic guy. I'm a realist. I'm a pro-energy, pro all of the above. It's a small drop in the bucket. Is it great for conservation? Does it have a true carbon benefit? Absolutely. Is it great for conservation, biodiversity, just conserving our lands? Absolutely. And it's about, when it comes down to the end of the day, it's about resource management. You know, I have a good business partner. He said, you know, let your coon dog tree and your bird dog point. Guys, we've got to allocate our resources to where they're best suited. You know, that's all it amounts to. So forestry industry, good job, kudos out there. Private landowners, hey, absolutely, get with your registered foresters, get with consult for it. How can we manage it better? Energy space out there, absolutely, we're going to need energy. We're going to need hydrocarbons a long time. Wind, solar, it's all got to come into the mix. Because think about, this world population is going to continue to grow. We need food. We need all of the above approach to do that. Our farmers out there are growing more soybeans, more corn on per acre than they ever have before. The timber industry is doing it. The energy industries out here, they're doing it. It's how do we conserve and manage these resources, and how does it fit with this growth in our population, global growth? And yeah, I think NativState's a small drop in the bucket there, but it's a cool story. It's about leaving a legacy, and I believe that through and through. So
well, and I guess at least there are companies like NativState out there trying to do something. It may be a drop in the bucket, but you're still trying to do something to capture all this carbon and help in any way that you can. At the end of the day.
At the end of the day, yeah. And I say drop in the bucket. it matters though it'll matter to our region. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But in the grand scheme of the whole, CO2 emissions globally, guys, I mean, that's a big undertaking. Mm-hmm. We need to be real about it too. It's a big undertaking. I think it's more about how do we allocate our resources most efficiently. And this is one of those steps.
Okay. Well, Stuart, man, is there anything else that you want to add or you want to say before we kind of shut this thing down?
Man, I would say thank you, Steph, to the AFA. Thank you to all our landowners out there. We got several hundred of you. You know who you are. I've enjoyed working with every one of you. Look forward to 2024, putting lots of checks in landowners' pockets in 2024 in a big way. And, appreciate everybody that's helped us, the timber industry in Arkansas that's come on board with us. And, so I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. Well, Stuart, man, hey, again, thank you for joining us and kind of smoothing some things out for me, because we've heard a lot about carbon and I've not taken the time to kind of look more into it. So you've cleared some things up for me today as well. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Seth.
All right. We want to thank you guys as well for joining us yet again here on Voices of Forestry. Let's give one more shout out and thank you to our sponsor this month, NativState, for their support of the show. We really appreciate them. And we also want to give a shout out and special thank you to some guy named Rob /Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love. That's off of his album, The Folkster. As always, we'll have a link to his website in the description of this episode, and you can find more of his music on Spotify and wherever you get your music. And make sure you come back next month when we'll have a new topic, a new discussion, and a new Voice of Forestry.